I did something most 22-year-olds probably don't do. I wrote my own eulogy of sorts, basically what I hope the people I care about most will say about me at my funeral. But there's a very specific and powerful reason why I did this. Now, I have no intention of leaving this earth anytime soon, but that's also what I thought October 6th, 2017.
We knew we were gonna drown, just
Yeah.
somehow we knew it.
You stop thinking rationally. You stop thinking like, hey, I've got family, like, hey, I've got friends. That I remember thinking to myself, why am I putting forth this much effort and I'm not even gonna make it anyway?
It was, your brain is saying to spend this much energy is too hard, let's just give up. That's literally where your brain starts going when you're in that moment. Because if Caleb wouldn't have been there, I would have drowned, I have no doubt in my mind.
We almost drowned right next to this beach, and yet here we are sitting here having a campfire a year later.
And nobody knows.
What's wrong with death, sir? What are we so mortally afraid of?
It's when all the body's vital functions stop permanently.
We must accept death as an essential part of life.
We slip into an unconscious state one last time as we draw the curtains to what our life was.
Thinking about your own death can be the best thing you can do for your life.
Most people don't plan their deaths, but do we plan our lives? When we were younger, we learned to focus on what was in front of us, while usually knowing exactly where we wanted to be someday. The statements of, I'm gonna be a firefighter, or I'm gonna be a heart surgeon, or I'm gonna be an airline pilot, were very common as children. And yet, as we got older, many of us have lost sight of what we want beyond tomorrow, or the next week, month, or year. We begin to slowly, gradually drift, like a riptide pulling us out to sea. And then, usually something happens.
You stop thinking rationally. You stop thinking like, hey, I've got family, like, hey, I've got friends.
And we look up and we find ourselves far away from where we thought we would be at this point in our lives. Perhaps our health is failing, or our marriage is broken, or maybe life just feels meaningless and unfulfilling. Whatever the case, if you've had this feeling, it's because we have become victims of the drift. The drift presents itself in our lives in different ways, and for me, it happened because I was unaware of it, and I was also very distracted. And there's a lot of correlations between what happened that day with myself and Caleb, where we nearly drowned, and what actually was happening in life. Just in the same way, there was also a current pulling me out. I was distracted. I wasn't focusing on the big picture of what could happen. And in my own life, I just had my head down and just did what was directly in front of me. And this is the exact opposite of what I want. I want to know accurately where I am and where I'm going, and provide a plan that gives me the best opportunity and ability to get there. And sometimes life is very rude when it gets our attention. Let's not wait for life to force us to stop. If Caleb and I had died that day, what would our friends, family, church, etc., what would they say about us? What would we be remembered for, and what legacy would we leave behind? The book Living Forward says this about our legacy. Our legacy is always being built every day and comprises the spiritual, intellectual, relational, and social capital we pass on. It's the sum total of the beliefs you embrace, the values you live by, the love you express, and the service you render to others. It's the U-shaped stamp you leave everywhere you go. And for Caleb and I, if I'm being honest, I don't think we would have left very much. So let's look at this practice that in one fell swoop helped me define and stop the drift, and also identified what I want my legacy to be, and helped me illuminate what really matters in my life. To do this, we have to begin at the end. This is decently obvious for other activities. Say you're planning a vacation, the first thing you do is define your destination, because that determines everything else needed in order to get there. And if this is true for a family vacation, it's infinitely more true when trying to map out your life and where you want to go, because the end determines everything else. And again, in the book Living Forward, he says, unless we take the time to regain our perspective and face the reality that life is short, we risk arriving at a destination we didn't choose, or at least one we wouldn't prefer. So that's exactly what I did. I started at the end, and I tried to be as least morbid as possible, but after all, I was envisioning my funeral, so yeah. The first thing I did is I wrote down who I hoped would be there, and that in and of itself was very interesting and enlightening. And I kind of split them up into social groups of when they entered into my life and others who have yet to enter into my life. And then one by one, I went through and answered questions like, what would I like them to remember about me? Or what would I hope that they would say about me? And sometimes if I was stuck or I couldn't put myself in their shoes, I would just start with Austin was, and then kind of write out their speech, as it were. Now, for some of you, this sounds very egotistical and the opposite of humility, whatever that is. Hey Google, what's the opposite of humility? The truth is, if you try this, you'll actually very quickly see that it has the opposite effect on you. So for me, it showed me what was really, truly important to me and what I actually cared about. Because so much of what we do and what we think is important in the moment really doesn't matter, if we're being honest about it. It's not like it has eternal value. So when I had finished answering these questions about what I hoped people would say about me, I had to kind of step back from that and ask myself objectively, okay, could these things be said about me now? And if not, how do I get there? Because it really, really illuminated what was most important to me, really and truly what mattered. Let's just talk about this for a second. The first thing is I would really encourage you to do this exercise, because just think how important that is. You only live life once and you only get this chance once. And so you can't go back and change anything afterwards. So what could be a better activity than clearly defining where you want to go and planning that out? You're not going to do it perfectly, but at least putting a target out there and saying, this is what's important to me and this is what I want to pursue. And I honestly don't think enough people do this, especially my age. I'm pretty young. I don't have a whole lot of life experience, and right now is when a minor tweak in my position could create massive amounts of change. And so now is when I want to be defining, what really matters and where does this end up? Let's begin at the end. For me, this was a very, very life-changing experience actually, because it really clarified a lot of things. And we talk about this a lot in the stereotypical, this hack changed my life and all this stuff. Maybe that changes a portion of your life, but this really, really could actually completely change your life. For me, I found things that I was like, okay, this is most important to me, but I'm not doing anything to get me there. Okay, so I need to cut out a whole bunch of stuff here, and I need to add a whole bunch of stuff, and I need to embrace my fear in this arena, otherwise I'm never gonna get there. And I got it from this book here, which I've referenced a few times in this video. It's a short little book, but it really packs a punch, and it will very quickly help you reorient your life. So if you found this video at all interesting or weird, you would probably really enjoy that book.